Yeah, hi. It's me again. Uh, so I just went for a little walk after that. My last video crashed. I wasn't quite finished what I was saying, so I just thought I'd carry on a little bit. Anyway, so I've got some more material. I'm just watching this video called Negative Automatic Thoughts. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was like the family scapegoating thing. You know, I've just fallen out with my mum. I've fallen out of her a few times, and it's just like it got to the point where I've really fucking had enough. It's like the camel's back has been broken like twice now. That's enough. You know? The thing about family scapegoating, you can't get these people to become aware of what they're doing. And what I've realised is that they're very much completely split personalities. All my family are totally like two different people. Each one of them, they're like two different people. There's a monster who hates me for no good reason at all. And then there's another person who, when I try to tell them about them, the way they act, they don't seem to understand at all. They don't understand what I'm saying. And it's like they resist hearing what I'm saying. When I sort of really break it down, they just sort of like get all, like my mum done the other day. She got all cranky, emotional, confrontational, you know, and would not listen to what I'm saying at all and just stormed off in a huff, you know. And it's typically what they do. If I sort of bring up the subject of family scapegoating, they just get all cranky and irrational and over emotional and won't listen to what I'm saying. That's what people that you can check it out, family scapegoating. There's loads of websites and videos and stuff online about it. You know, you can't get these people to wake up, you know, and snap out of their behavior. And it's really, really horrible what they do. They try to make you go crazy. They constantly pick on you, but in really subtle ways. So it's really, at the time when they do it, it's really hard for you to get, you know, to see what they're doing, because they're doing it subconsciously. It's sort of like demonic. It's like a demonic subconscious attack, you know. And so it's really hard to come to terms with what's happening. So, you know, even I'm not approaching 50 now, and I'm only just starting to really get to grips with what's happening and really making a real strong barrier between me and my family. And I've noticed this since I spoke to my mum a month or so ago. Or was it probably only about 3 weeks ago? Not even that. Just over 2 weeks ago. I've had at least two quite bad dreams about my mother, right? And I don't dream about her very often, right? So just in the last 2 weeks, I've had two bad dreams. The last one was a few days ago, and I had this really quite bad, severe wound in my leg in the dream. It almost looked like a shark bite or something, you know. It was like these big holes in my leg, dripping loads of blood. You know, really, you know, not just like a gash, but like all the flesh had been removed, you know. And it was not a simple matter of sewing it up. This is a really quite serious wound. I was bleeding. And in the dream, she was leading me around. She lived in a hotel in the dream. She doesn't live in a hotel in reality. But in the dream, she's living in this really plush hotel, really like a 5-star hotel. And she's leading me around all these like corridors and stuff, and in these doorways and out of these doorways, and going me round and round and round. And I'm starting to notice that, you know, I looked down, I saw that there's a trail of blood going through a doorway, and it's coming in two different directions from out of this doorway. And now she's leading me along this same corridor for the third time, you know, and just leading me round in circles, like as if she's trying to help me. She's not supporting me at all. I'm starting to feel faint, you know, from blood loss, you know. And then I woke up after that, right, and I started thinking, what the fuck, this is a really bad dream. And I started thinking about it, and I'm thinking, this is a dream. It's telling me that my mum is like leading me along these pathways that are like sucking the life out of me, draining me of life force. And she's doing it deliberately, but she's pretending like she doesn't know what she's doing. She's pretending ignorance. All she really is ignorant. One of the things about ignorance and evil I've realized is that if people are ignorant enough, it doesn't really make any difference as far as how evil they are compared to if someone was deliberately trying to be evil. In fact, if somebody's ignorant, it's a lot easier for them to cause people real harm and get away with it than if they were deliberately trying to cause them harm. So ignorant people can be more destructive than people that are deliberately evil. Ah, dear. So this is one of the reasons that, it's about doing the work is like avoiding, sometimes you have to just get away from, completely cut yourself off from all your old friends and relatives, especially someone like myself who's had family scapegoating. What happens, right, when I start getting friends when I'm growing up, and all my friends, they end up meeting my family and they see the way my family treat me, and it's very subtle. So it's not something that most people are aware of consciously. But what happens is my friends all start behaving the same as my family, and they also start scapegoating me, using me as a scapegoat. A convenient place to dump all their thought of negative energy on. And it can happen it almost always happens in very subtle ways. There's always a seemingly plausible reason or explanation for why they're behaving like they are. But when you add it all up, you see that, like, for example, as soon as I reached 16, my dad kicked me out of the house for no reason. Just, because I'm 16. Oh, I'm kicking you out of the house now. Now, I've got 3 siblings who are all younger than me. Nothing like that happened to them. None of them got kicked out of the house as soon as they were 16. Not remotely. It wasn't. No one ever thought about kicking them. But me, I get kicked out of the house as soon as I'm 16. Similar things happened again and again and again throughout my life. My mum went and hid herself away because my dad was in a bad mood one day, and my dad come to my house and he started smashing my windows and looking for my mum, apparently. Did he go to anyone else, any of my other siblings' houses, and smash their windows? No. He didn't even think about it. And what did he do to sort of recompense me for all the shit he calls me? He gave me the money to pay for the glass so that I could repair the windows myself, right? And he said sorry. That's supposed to sort of like make up for like breaking all my windows and throwing stuff out of my house into the street. That's kind of how family scapegoating works, and it's how most people are dark magicians. Most people are really quite evil. They're bad people, and if you're a good person, they tend to pick on you. This is like it's the story of Christ. You try to do good in the world, you bring light into the world. You try to be a good person, and people hate you for it. I'm going to read this little bit again, right? This is a black guy. It's from this book, Freakonomics. When the kids found this out, I became a target. It was my time away from home, my first experience in all black situation, and I find myself being punished for everything I'd ever been taught was right. I got all A's, and I was hated for it. I spoke correctly and was called punk. I had to learn a new language simply to be able to deal with the threats. I had good manners and was a good little boy and paid for it with my hide. This is what most people are like. If you try to be a good person, it's like, what you do is you make them look bad because they can't be bothered to try being a good person, or they view themselves as bad people or whatever. It's very hard to understand ignorance because they won't talk about it. They won't talk about what the problem is. So, and they automatically are suspicious of anyone that's more intelligent than them, or wants to try and delve into their emotions, because they've blocked their emotions. They push them down, you know, and they keep them hidden. Now, the way this works is it's really interesting. There's this idea in Native American culture of this thing called the Wetiko, and it's like a demon or an alien consciousness. Don Juan talks about it. Carlos Castaneda talks about it. Well, I noticed it when I was quite young, about 11 or 12 years old. I was watching my parents, and I could see this thing happening a long time before I ever heard anything about the Wetiko. I already could see it. These people, like my parents, you know, but I see it lots of different people, and it's about sin. Another way of looking at it is the 7 deadly sins, like pride, sloth, envy, greed, gluttony, these kind of things, you know. People have these small, quite relatively small sins, right? And they try to cover them up with lies. Now, what happens when they cover them up with lies is they create a sort of blanket of ignorance around them. And then what they have to do is, in order to protect those lies, they have to create more lies. And so they create another blanket of ignorance above that. And they just keep adding these blankets of ignorance and lies on top over and over again. So they sort of keep trying to suppress this tiny little sin. And there's a really interesting fairy story about this, right? The Princess and the Pea. Now, these people, a lot of the time, it's pride. So they're princesses, right? And because they've made one little mistake, right, and they don't want anyone to know, so what they do, it's like this little pea. They put what the princess does is there's a pea under her mattress, right? And instead of lifting the mattress up and taking the pea out, she gets all these people, all her servants, to put another mattress on top. And then for a little tiny while, she's okay. And then she starts noticing the pea again. She can still feel it, right? And so instead of getting the pea out, she gets these people to put another mattress on top. And it goes on and on and on. So she's got like 20 mattresses, and she can still feel the pea, right? That's what these people are like. You know, they would rather die and make everyone else suffer around them suffer than just deal with their own little bit of sin and take the pea from under the mattress. There are other stories about this as well. The Cinderella story. The Cinderella story is about family scapegoating. Also, Harry Potter as well. There's a lot of there's an aspect of that in the Harry Potter films and books. They talk about it like as though you're the stepchild, you know, and you've got a stepmother and Cinderella. She has the ugly stepsisters and the ugly stepmother. But how it really works in real life is that you're actually your real parents and your real family, but they treat you with contempt. But in it's not all the time, but it's so often, it's so regular that it's sort of like it really starts wearing away at your psychological well-being, your sense of self-esteem. They sort of constantly attack your self-esteem and your sanity, because if you try to talk to them about it, they go straight away into denial, and they get all emotional and cranky and stuff, you know. So they try to make you feel that if you try to sort the problem out, it's more hassle than it's worth, you know. So you just end up going back, and they train you like an animal throughout your whole life, and they will just keep you trapped in this horrible world, a horrible nightmare. And there's loads of websites on Google, on the internet about this, and there's loads of videos about it, talking about how horrible it is. The interesting thing is, though, that it's probably worse for them because they're not real people. In order to do this family scapegoating, they have to divide themselves into two separate, completely separate personalities. You know, one of them is deeply unconscious, and the other one is conscious, and they stay separate. So they can't ever. These people like that can't do the work because they can't align their subconscious with their conscious. And I'm trying to look at it the positive side from my point of view. It's one of the things that has caused me to do the work. You know, it's pushed me to have to do the work. This is why I've done the work. And I feel like I'm making progress, right? And lately as well, since I had this little discussion with my mum a few weeks ago, I can feel this bad energy. I feel like she's like a black magician, just like what Don Juan says, that 90% of people are black magicians. So when you start like not letting them get away with all their bullshit and they're the fucking nasty, evil shit, the Watiko shit, they start hating you, and they do like almost like subconscious black magic rituals to attack you. So I can feel myself feeling like there's this pressure to make me feel depressed. It's my mum and my family are pushing this energy, their depression, onto me. You know, like, and it's like I can feel the effect of it. It's trying to push me down. I know it's like this is not mainstream sort of like discussion. It's people don't talk about this stuff. Just like they don't talk about the energy vampires, because in a way they're kind of energy vampires. They seem to get a lot of energy, all the energy that they're pushing out of me, all the life force they're pushing out of me. It seems as though they get it. It's a way of them squeezing the life out of me and having it for themselves. They're like vampires, you know. And so when I try to cling on to that life myself, my natural life force, they get really angry and frustrated, and they sort of send me all their negative energy. It's really, really horrible. You know, it seems as though there should be a straightforward way of avoiding this, you know. There should be, but you can't talk to them. So you basically, what I'm having to do at the moment is just keep my distance from them and keep reminding myself that I'm always going to hate them. There's nothing they can do that can possibly make it okay, right? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe me having such a. But the thing is, why should I treat them any differently to how they treated me? I've tried to be reasonable with them, but they won't be reasonable back, and they hate me. And they keep every chance they get, they try to shoot me down. They sort of try to sort of attack my sense of self-esteem and stuff. And I've got nothing left. If I did have any free will before, I've lost it all, and I don't even want it back. I don't want free will when it comes to them. I'm going to hate them no matter what, and I'm determined to carry on hating them for forever. You know, what they've done is inexcusable. They've tried to punish me for no reason at all, except they didn't feel up to having a go at the people that deserved the punishment. You know, they're like cowards. They're cowards who couldn't face up to the real culprits. So they've made a scapegoat, i.e. me, and they tried to punish me all my life for something that other people have done. So from my point of view, they're totally evil, and they should go to hell and be punished for a very long time to sort of teach them a lesson. If there is a God, then God will do that for me. He will punish them on my behalf to sort of balance the scales. And if there is a God and he's not going to do that, then I can't respect God at all. I'm not going to respect God because he's made my life fucking miserable for absolutely no fucking reason. And he's helping the people that have made my life miserable. You know, I'm not a very great fan of God, actually, to be honest. If there is a God, as far as I'm concerned, God is just doesn't really put any effort into this creation. If there is a God, then he doesn't try very hard, you know. He's a terrible parent. Just like as above, so below. My parents are completely terrible parents. They gave me and my two siblings, my two brothers, cocaine when I was 10, and my brothers were 7 and 5 years old. That's about as I have about as much respect for God as I do for my own parents. Not practically none at all. I've prayed. I've tried praying for help and for answers and stuff. I've tried working myself, and it just like when I tried working, then everything sort of the world gangs up on me. These things are just seem to be extremely hard to overcome. There's no help. There's no help in the world. There's no help for people like me. We have to help ourselves. And that's one of the things about doing the work, is to help yourself, Okay, what's this video about again? Oh yeah, negative automatic thoughts. Right. Now, what is this guy talking about? Let me just have a look.
The way you overgeneralize and say all French people are rude, right? So the overgeneralization is one of the gnats that you can really take control of, as long as you recognize that you're doing it, right? So you recognize.
Yeah, he's gone all funny. His video's gone all clicky. I was going to go through some of the things he said, because as he started the video, I could see he was going to make about 3 or 4 points, and I was going to sort of address them. So yeah, it's funny. I have these negative automatic thoughts. A lot of it comes from my childhood and my upbringing and the family scapegoating and the school system. I've been bombarded with so much negative energy and negative behavior from other people that it's really hard for me to sort of spontaneously create positive thoughts for myself. They tend to spiral back into negative like things, just because out of habit and like how these things have gone for me over so many years of such a long period of time, like being like mired in this sort of swamp of negative energy that's just so hard to move through. You end up stuck there. You feel like you're just stuck and there's nothing you can do. There's no escape from it. How do I escape from all this negative stuff? How do I get myself into a nice, positive, wholesome existence where I'm enjoying my life? I feel like I'm a good... One of the things, the first thing he talked about was overgeneralization. So you think that everyone's evil. Now, I'm pretty sure that not everyone's evil. It's probably just somewhat more than most people. So it's probably over 50% of people that are bad. This goes back to Greek, the Greek idea from the Apollo temple. The oracle at Delphi says that most people are bad. I would tend to agree. Most people are bad. But what's the actual percentage? Well, according to modern science and research, only about, this is how I'm breaking it down now, about 10% of people have got a conscience, have got a properly developed conscience. They've done experiments, right, to see if they could get normal people to administer a series of electric shocks to people, and they had like a doctor there who was like wearing a white coat, an authority figure who would say to them, yes, it's okay, nothing bad will happen to you, you won't get any comeuppance, you won't get any punishment if anything serious happens to these people. And they kept increasing the voltage of these electric shocks by 30 volts, from like 30 volts all the way up to 330 volts. And when it got to 330 volts or 300 volts, the actor, because it was an actor, would pretend to die. They would scream, and they would, like, everything would go silent. And then the doctor would say, yeah, now move it up to 330 volts and carry on. And 9 out of 10 people would just carry on. But 10% of people, 1 out of 10, would get to the point where the actor was saying, you're killing me, stop, you're killing me. And then they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't administer any more electric shocks. So they've done this experiment all around the world, right? Loads and loads of times. And they've discovered that only about 10% of people have a measurable conscience. They won't kill people, even if you tell them they won't be punished for it. Only 10% of people won't kill people if they're told to. So only 10% of people are really good, decent people. So it's only about 10%. And then you've got to think in terms of how these people are educated, how they educate their children. So we're going to say that, just for example, say 18% of those people are in varying different marriages. So they have an influence on the upbringing of their children, right? And therefore, 18% of people are going to be able to influence their children. And that's going to have, like, say, like maybe a 75% influence on their children to make them act as though they're good people, even if they haven't got a very well-developed conscience, right? So, and that's also going to spread throughout the rest of the population to a certain degree over periods of time. So you probably can add another 5% of that. So you can probably make it up to about 25% of people that are going to act in a good way most of the time, even 30% if you sort of extend that on. But probably not more than about 30% of people are going to do the right thing, when it's quite obvious that what the right thing to do is. In certain situations, it could be as much as 90 and 95%, even 100%. But in specific situations that are more hard to understand, and there is a lot of them, you're only talking like 30% at the most, maybe only 10%, somewhere between that. Let's say 20% of people. 20% of people are going to do the right thing. When we live in a democracy and everybody's got the vote, 80% of people are going to vote for the bad guy, and only 20% of people are going to vote for the good guy. That's going to happen again and again and again, and it's going to whittle down people's ability to do the right thing. People are bad. Most people are bad, right? Ah, dear. So to me, I've really looked into this. I've thought about it very thoroughly, and that's how it seems to me. So I'm not saying everyone's bad. In various different situations, sometimes most people can seem like decent people. Even nearly everybody can seem like decent people sometimes. But when it comes to very specific situations, it's only a handful of people. It's probably only 10%, maybe 15 or 20% of people that are going to do the right thing. And a lot of those situations happen quite often. You know, things like speaking out about cannabis curing cancer. You're not going to get even 10% of people to do that. You know, it may be about 10%, and that's not enough to make a difference. Family scapegoating, again, it's very difficult to get people to talk about it. You're probably getting less than 10%, because most of those people, even if they've got a good conscience, they don't know enough about it to talk about it, so they don't talk about it. The school system causing trauma, again, it only affects 5% of people significantly. So you're talking 5% of 20% whose parents are actually going to try and do something about it. So it's going to actually only be about 1% of people that are going to talk about it. It's not enough to make a difference. You know? So, and another thing, that's another thing I forgot to talk about. This is another reason why I was making this other video. In the Bible, the book of Revelations, right? This is another interesting thing. God talks about, or John talks about the winepress of God, how all the sinner's blood is going to be squashed, and all the blood will run in the streets up to the horses' bridles, you know, and there's going to be a lot of blood spilled, and it's the winepress of God, right? Some of the Bible is really fucking bloodthirsty, you know. Yeah, dear. And I wonder about that, you know, and so maybe these things like H.G. Wells, The Time Machine, you know, where we diverge into two races of cannibals and vegans, right? And considering some of the things I've heard about how raw meat is like really beneficial, maybe that's what God wants. Maybe God wants us to sort of like be like that. That's what he, you know, he considers sinners people that don't go with their nature. And because at the beginning of the Bible, what's it called? The tree of knowledge, right? Another one of one thing, bit of knowledge I come across was that the tree of knowledge is, according to certain Hebrews, means the tree of conscience. So it means the tree or the way of having a conscience. These 10% of people that have got a conscience are actually, you know, the problem. They're trying to make everything more humane and civilized and stuff, but it's impossible because 90% of people don't have a conscience and they never will. You know, so that it's like we might as well just eat some of them. You know, get rid of law. There's no point having law when most people like are going to find ways around it. Everyone cheats. This is another thing about in this book I just was reading, Freakonomics. Everyone cheats. You know, not everyone. There's a small portion that don't, but it's a very small portion. Again, it's like 10% who don't cheat. Most people will cheat if they can get away with it. And everyone does this. School teachers, politicians, everyone, people that pay their taxes, everybody cheats at some point, you know. I mean, not everyone, but like a big portion, most people cheat. So there's not really much point having laws. Why not just sort of like create a hell, like just get rid of laws and let people kill each other and eat each other and stuff and just let nature take its course. Maybe that's what God wants, you know. Maybe trying to project some people's like civilized conscience onto things is actually a really bad idea because it just makes everything much more complicated, and we get to the situation where we are now where we're destroying the planet. Whereas if we just kept things much more natural and there was a lot more chaos, everyone would enjoy themselves a lot more, you know, and be generally happy and have better lives. Even though some of us might be cannibals. And the only people that stop this are the people that have consciences, the people that believe themselves to be good, honest, upstanding humans, right? People that you know, understand there's a good distinction between wrong and right. The problem is that only about 1 in 10 people understand the difference between wrong and right. So what about the other 90%? You've got to try and sort of police them all the time. You have to make all these rules and regulations for them all to live by, and then they get depressed. They become criminals, and we destroy the world. We create a man-made mass extinction event. So maybe the answer is not a clean answer. It's not like a clean, sterile, bureaucratic answer. Maybe it's just we need to go back to nature. We need to become more like animals, and that's the way forward. You know. Okay, I think I'm going to call it a day here. Okay, thanks for watching. Leave comments, ask questions. Thank you again. Goodbye. Have a great day.